folks. Criminal damage this week then. Criminal damage is a very straightforward set of offences that deals with incidents where people destroy or damage other people's property. It is what it says on the box. It's quite common. You'll see plenty of this at the magistrates' court. Most of these offences are in the magistrates' court. Anything under £5,000 worth of damage is summary. So the offence itself is found under section 1 brackets 1 of the Criminal Damage Act 1971. That's normally referred to as basic damage or simple damage. It's where a person destroys or damages another person's property without lawful excuse, intending to destroy or damage property, or being reckless as to whether damage is destroyed, whether property is destroyed or damaged. That is the simple basic offence. Now in your exam, you may be asked questions, and I've got the new book, by the way. This is the book this is the level 3 course materials. It's quite good, it's quite succinct. I've put some reading materials on there for you, some of the chapters, or you may have access to this. Now the things you definitely need to know for the assessment are the definition of basic criminal damage. I'll just explain that. That's section 1 brackets 1. Explain the actus reus and mens rea elements of basic criminal damage. So the actus reus damages or destroys property belonging to another. It's questionable whether without lawful excuse is part of the actus reus or as a defence, but it doesn't really matter. Don't get bogged down with it. Just put without lawful excuse as part of the actus reus. And the mens rea is intention to damage or destroy, or being reckless as to whether the property is destroyed or damaged. Now for the mens rea element, it's subjective recklessness. The leading authority is RVG and another, UK House of Lords 2004. This is a case where two young boys set fire to some wheelie bins outside a co-op in Newport Pagnell near Milton Keynes, and the fire spread and set fire to the co-op and caused £1 million worth of damage. They were originally convicted, then it was quashed. And the judges said that because they were young, the test at the time was an objective test, R.V. Caldwell, which said what would a reasonable man think would be a risk. And the courts decided that because they were children, 11 and 12, that test was too stringent. So the test was changed. So RVG is the leading case. So please go and have a look at RVG and study that in your book. So it's a subjective test just for damage. So you've got R.V. Cunningham 1957, which is a general test, risk-taking test, which is a subjective test. However, for criminal damage, it has its own separate test. Right, also then, apply the requirements of the offence of basic criminal damage to a given situation. So you're going to be given examples where people have set fire to waste paper bins or thrown stones through windows or damaged somebody's vehicle. So you need to apply the definition, the actus reus, the mens rea, to the scenario. Right. Define the offence of aggravated criminal damage. So aggravated criminal damage is found in section 1 brackets 2 of the Criminal Damage Act 1971. That's where a person destroys or damages property intending or being reckless as to whether somebody's life is endangered. This carries a maximum of life imprisonment. So this is the aggravated form of damage. Normally a person can't be liable for damaging their own property. So if a person commits simple damage to their own property, there's no criminal liability. However, if a person destroys or damages their own property in such a way that they intend or they're reckless as to endangering another person's life, then that forms liability for section 1 brackets 2. Apply the requirements of the offence of aggravated criminal damage to a situation. Excuse me. So you need to obviously learn the definition of section 1 brackets 2, the aggravated damage. This is this endangering life, and then apply that to scenarios. Explain the requirements of the defence of lawful excuse. So the defences are found in section 5 of the Criminal Damage Act. And section 5 says that a person will not be guilty of criminal damage if, under section 5 brackets 2 brackets A, they believe they would have had the consent of the person who was entitled to gain consent, i.e. the owner, to damage that property. So it's, the person believes that by damaging the property, they are acting under the impression that the person who owns the property, who can give consent to that, has done. Section 5 brackets 2 brackets B gives a person a lawful excuse if they believe that property was in immediate need of protection and they had to damage the property in order to save somebody's life or protect other property. And that means was reasonable having regard to all the circumstances. So there are defences. You need to know about those. They're contained in section 5. You've got 5 brackets A and 5 brackets 2 brackets A and 5 brackets 2 brackets B. So you need to understand those for the assessment. Apply the requirements of the defence of lawful excuse to a given situation. So in the scenario, you may be given something, and if you look into the activity sheets, there was some situation where a person would be able to raise this defence, that they were acting under the impression that a person would have consented. And the leading case for this is Jaggard v. Dickinson, 1971, where 2 student friends, one student stopping with another. She goes out drinking, comes back to the house and gets the wrong house and breaks the window at the back, thinking, well, my friend won't let me stop outside. I'll pay her for the repair to the damage. But it's the wrong person's house. So she's convicted and appeals. And the court said, well, yes, she's been drinking, but she had an honestly held belief that the person would have consented to that damage. So she was acquitted. Right, and finally, explain the meaning of arson. Arson is found in section 1 brackets 3 of the Criminal Damage Act 1971, and that basically says that anybody who commits a basic damage or an aggravated damage by fire is criminally liable for arson. So arson is either of those criminal damages by fire. So the sort of simple basic arson, and then you've got the more aggravated version which can carry a maximum of life. So some of the key cases mentioned by the CILEx team are RV in Hardman versus Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset. That relates to a person who spray painted white silhouette figures on the floor to commemorate Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The paint was like whitewash, and the council came along and had to spend time and money cleaning the pavement, and the person was convicted of damage. What that says really is, if a person does something to somebody else's property, and that person has to spend either time, money or effort to rectify it, then that is criminal damage. Damage itself is not defined in statute. it's in Samuels v Stubbs 1972. Judge Walters said that each damage should be taken into its own context. However, if something is so trivial, then it's not damage. Leading case for this, A brackets a juvenile 1978, where a juvenile spits at a police officer and some of the spittle goes onto the officer's waterproof coat, which can easily be wiped off. He was charged, convicted and appealed, and the divisional court said no. The coat was designed to be waterproof. The spittle is obviously water. It was wiped off easily. If it had been a cotton item or wool or something, a fabric that was a bit more delicate, and it left a stain, then it may be damaged. But in these circumstances, that was too trivial. Samuels v Stubbs 1972, where somebody stamps on a police officer's hat. The hat was rendered inoperable for a period of time and had to be cleaned up and rectified. That was held to be damage. In RV Fiac 2005, Fiac is arrested and put into a police cell, gets a blanket, and flushes it down the toilet, and floods his cell and two neighbouring cells in the passageway, rendering the cell complex inoperable. Although the water's clean and the blanket was soaked in clean water, it was held to be damage because it required expense to put right the mess that was caused, and the cells were rendered inoperable. Let's see. Yeah, we've got those cases in there. Okay then, so in the case of RV Steer, which is another popular case, Steer goes to the house of a business contact who he's had some altercation with and fires a shot through the window, causing damage. He's convicted of aggravated damage and appeals, and they say that the actual damage, i.e. the hole that was through the window, was not sufficient to endanger life. Yes, the means of causing the damage, i.e. shooting the gun, was dangerous, and yes, it probably would be subject to other offences, but the damage itself needs to be the cause of endangering life, not the means of damaging. So RV Steer is a popular case. Right, there's a recent case in Luke Wenton 2010 from this blog, where Wenton threw a brick through V's bedroom window and afterwards threw a canister of petrol through the broken window with a piece of paper that had been lit. It was extinguished quickly and there was no fire. And he was originally convicted of aggravated criminal damage, being reckless as to whether life would be endangered, contrary to section 1 brackets 2 of the Criminal Damage Act 1971. It was held that D's intention to endanger life, or being reckless about whether life would be endangered, must stem from the actual damage to the property. In this case, that was the broken window. Clearly, D did not intend to endanger V's life by means of breaking the window, and D should have been charged with the basic damage. So the damage itself must endanger the life. So have a read through the chapter that I've put on and have a look at these cases. The cases mentioned in this chapter are Hardman, A juvenile, Samuels v Stubbs, Morphosis v Salmon, Lloyd 1991, Blake v DPP 1993, Serey Worry 2012, that's a case where somebody's got a marker pen and written on parking signs. Steer, Wenton and Denton 1982. So have a look at some of those cases in the literature. But I've told you exactly what you need to know for the test in relation to the assessment criteria. So try to keep to that and look at the past papers, go to the past papers, have a look at the questions on criminal damage, and I think you'll find they'll be quite similar in your exam. So you'll just have to go back and look at the types of questions they ask. Okay.